Good morning, children. Welcome to class 11, session 2020-21. Now, in English core, one of the books that we have is in class 11, we have snapshots, and in that we are taking up the first lesson, The Summer of the Beautiful White Horse by William Sarin. Now, this is a story of two poor Armenian boys who were extremely fond of riding horses. Aram is about 9 years old and Murad was about 13 years old, and they both belonged to the Garoglanian tribe, whose people were extremely famous for honesty and trust. Murad is able to steal a horse, and after enjoying ride for about a month, he thinks of inviting his cousin Aram to take a ride on the horse. Finally, they decide to return the horse to its owner, and as they did not want that the reputation of honesty and trust that they have maintained for centuries, that because of their action that this should be spoilt or their reputation should be harmed. So it is actually about the moral choices among adolescents. Now we'll take up the lesson. This story is about two poor Armenian boys who belong to a tribe whose hallmarks are trust and honesty. That is, that the hallmarks would mean the special traits or distinctive features, and these are trust, that they were a very trustworthy tribe, and honest, extremely honest, one can say. One day back there in the good old days, when I was 9, and the world was full of every imaginable kind of magnificence, and life was still a delightful and mysterious dream, my cousin Murad, who was considered crazy by everybody who knew him except me, came to my house at 4 in the morning and woke me up tapping on the window of my room. Now, one day back there in the good old days would mean that he is feeling nostalgic. That is, the good old days, a wonderful time as a child that he has spent, that he was so happy and extremely, life was wonderful. When he was 9, and the world was full of every imaginable kind of magnificence. That means it was splendid. That means one can say that very attractive and impressive. And life was still a delightful and mysterious dream. That means he did not know what future held for him. My cousin Murad, who was considered crazy by everybody who knew him except me. That meant that the rest of the family considered Murad to be crazy. But Aram was one who understood his cousin Murad extremely well, and he knew that he was a very lively person, he was very enthusiastic and a very kind-hearted person also. He came to my house at 4 in the morning and woke me up tapping on the window of my room. That means early morning, about 4, he came and knocked at his window so that the rest of the family would not be disturbed and they would not come to know also. Aram, he said, that is, Murad called out to Aram. I jumped out of bed and looked out of the window. Obviously, when he heard his name being called out, he jumped out of the bed to look out of the window to see who had called him. I could not believe what I saw. He says the sight was unbelievable. It was incredible. Why? Because to see Murad on that beautiful horse. It wasn't morning yet, but it was summer, and with daybreak not many minutes around the corner of the world, it was light enough for me to know I wasn't dreaming. That means he thought, the very first thought that came into his mind, he presumed that to be a dream. But the next moment also, he came to understand that it wasn't a dream. It was reality. My cousin Murad was sitting on a beautiful white horse. That is the beautiful sight that he saw. I stuck my head out of the window and rubbed my eyes. To see, rubbed my eyes meaning that in disbelief, because he could not believe that this was too good to be true. Yes, he said in Armenian, it's a horse. And Murad replied in the language, the Armenian language that they used, that he is not dreaming. He is waiting for him on that horse, and make it quick if you want to ride. That means if you wish to take a ride on the horse, you are most welcome. So he had actually come here to invite him to take a ride on the horse. Further, I knew my cousin Murad enjoyed being alive. more than anybody else. But anybody else who had ever fallen into the world by mistake. But this was more than even I could believe. He says that he knew that he was very lively, he knew his temperament very well, but this was something a bit too far, something that he could not understand, something that he could not comprehend. In the first place, why he says now, in the first place, my earliest memories had been memories of horses, and my first longings had been longings to ride. So he says that ever since he had come to senses, from the time that he had memories, from the time that he had become a little mature, he had longed to ride a horse. It was a desire, an ardent wish. What? To ride a horse. So from childhood, one can say, from the earliest times, one, as much as that he could remember and recall, that he had longed to ride a horse. So obviously, the moment he saw Murad sitting on that horse, it pleased him tremendously. But the next moment, he says that something that troubled him also. This was a wonderful part. The wonderful part to see Murad come here to invite him and take a ride on the horse. In the second place, we were poor. The next moment, the realization that he had was that the fact that they were poor, that they lived in poverty. So, naturally, what really troubled him was to wonder how did Murad come to have the possession of that horse. This was the part that would not permit me to believe what I saw. That means the fact, the realization that they belong to the Garoglanian tribe, the tribe that was extremely poor. So, the question of Murad having that horse is something that troubled him tremendously. We were poor, we had no money. Our whole tribe was poverty stricken. That means that they lived in absolute poverty, abject poverty. So, nobody could ever afford to buy a horse, so that is what bothered him. Every branch of the Garoglanian family, that means every family of this tribe, all the members of the tribe, rather, one can say, was living in the most amazing and comical poverty in the world. That means that all the families, part of this Garoglanian tribe, all of them were living in absolute poverty, living in absolute and abject poverty. Nobody could understand where we ever got money enough to keep us with food in our bellies. Bellies means stomach. That means that nobody could understand. Nobody could nobody could really understand the fact that how and where the money was coming for them to buy food enough for their survival. Even the old men of the family, that means even the old people who were experienced people, knowledgeable people, also did not really know how they managed to survive till now and how they were managing to survive now. Most important of all, though, we were famous for our honesty. But the fact remained that they were famous for honesty. The reputation that they had maintained of honesty was even today. The time when they were wealthy, that time also they were honest, but then things were not very good for them. They fell upon bad times. Now also they have maintained this trait, this feature, this quality of honesty. We had been famous for our honesty for something like 11 centuries. Even when we had been the wealthiest family in what we like to think was the world. That means that even the time when we were wealthy for about 11 centuries, the time when they were wealthy, that time they were honest. But now that they are all living in a state of poverty, now also they have maintained honesty. They have not given up on that. We were proud first. Proud first meaning that they took pride. Pride in what? In the fact that they belong to this Garoglanian tribe. Honest next. So they were proud that they belonged to the Garoglanian tribe. The next quality that they had was of honesty. And after that, we believed in right and wrong. That means they were able to discriminate between right and wrong. They were able to discern what is right and what is wrong. And therefore, nobody would ever do anything wrong in life. Now, none of us would take advantage of anybody in the world. And the next important thing was also that is that they would never exploit anybody. They would not take advantage of anybody in the world. And let alone steal. and stealing was something far that would never enter their minds, or something that they would never ever imagine also. So we see that Aram had mixed thoughts. On one hand, he was overwhelmed with joy to see Murad waiting on that beautiful horse to take a ride, but at the same time, he was also disturbed and wondered where Murad got that horse from, or where did he, and stealing something that nobody in the family could ever think of.